What do you picture when you think about parental leave? What kind of image comes to mind? I'm guessing that for many, if not most of you, you picture something like this. We picture a stereotypical image of a loving mother bonding with her child during those precious newborn weeks. When we think about caregiving in the United States, we typically think about mothers. Now I want you to change your mindset a bit, and I want you to think about fathers in caregiving. What kind of image comes to mind when you think about fathers in caregiving? Maybe you picture something like this. An image of a frustrated dad who's trying to focus on work and can't quite figure out how to manage parenting responsibilities. We learn these stereotypes about mothers and fathers, and they shape not only our views on parenting, but broader patterns of gender inequality as well. Now, when I started my career, I was interested in understanding the role that religion played in either promoting or breaking these stereotypes of fathers as inept parents and primary breadwinners. Basically, I wanted to understand what factors might motivate fathers to become more engaged parents. Now, you may be thinking that since I studied fatherhood early in my career, maybe I was already a father or had a really strong fathering identity, but neither was really true. Prior to becoming a father, I never really thought about parenting. I'd always assumed that I would have children someday, and if you had asked me how I would picture myself as a father at the time, I probably would have described something like this. I figured I'd be fully engaged in all aspects of domestic life. I'd be doing childcare, I'd be doing housework, I'd be doing both at the same time with a smile on my face, and I'd be doing both really well. But I hadn't really thought about whether or how that would actually be possible. Eventually, my wife and I planned having a family, and we had somewhat of a bumpy road to parenthood. So when it was finally time to plan for the arrival of our first child, I wanted to be sure to experience everything. I knew nothing about paternity leave, and I naively assumed that there was some policy in place that would allow me to take time off work when my son was born. So I called my workplace's HR office to inquire about options. And they told me that I was welcome to take a couple of days off to be at the hospital with my wife and my son. But if I wanted any more time off than that, I would need a letter from my wife's doctor stating that I needed to be at home because she was unable to care for our newborn son. I was shocked. Here I was in 2012 being told by an HR rep that it is the mother's responsibility to take care of a newborn child, and that fathers should only share in this immense responsibility if the mother is incapacitated. Now, these gendered stereotypes about caregiving are ingrained into the culture of the United States and reinforced within workplaces. In fact, my first memory as a father only served to reinforce these ideas in my own mind. My wife had a C-section, so when my son was born, the nurses took him, checked him out, cleaned him off, and then handed him to me. As he sat there on my lap in the operating room, he made it very clear that he was hungry, and he sat there doing this the entire time we were there in the operating room. Needless to say, between the stereotypes about fatherhood that I was well aware of and my inability to feed my very hungry and very demanding newborn son, I was not feeling too confident about my ability to be an engaged father right from the start. Now, my experiences at work, combined with my experiences becoming a father, ignited a passion in me that changed my entire career. My attention immediately turned to paternity leave, wanting to understand fathers' access to leave and whether and how paternity leave may help to change the stereotypes we have about mothers and fathers. I quickly learned that my experiences were not unique. The United States is one of the only countries throughout the world that does not have a national paid parental leave policy. And many other high-income countries even have policies that provide periods of paid leave specifically to fathers. While other countries have recognized the value in enabling and encouraging both parents to take time off work for the birth of a child, parents in the United States largely have to fend for themselves. Only 27% of US workers have access to paid family leave, and less than 2/3 of workers have access to unpaid leave through the Family and Medical Leave Act. Everyone else is left to cobble together vacation days, personal days, or informal arrangements if they want to take time off work when they have a child. And this was my experience. as I made informal arrangements to work remotely for a couple of months when my son was born so that I could be at home with him and my wife. The result of this patchwork system in the United States means that parents in the US take far shorter leaves than parents in other countries, with American fathers taking approximately 1 week off work on average. Taking leave in the US is even sometimes discouraged because it demonstrates a lack of commitment to work. And workers in the US who take long leaves often face stigmas and other penalties. Moreover, because mothers have access to longer periods of paid leave in the private sector and are expected to be primarily responsible for childcare, the transition to parenthood in the United States often traditionalizes family roles. By taking short leaves, fathers strengthen their position as primary breadwinner and take on the role of secondary parent. In contrast, mothers often shoulder most of the responsibility for childcare and face negative consequences in the paid labor market, such as lower pay, discrimination, and perceived lack of commitment to work. Consequently, lack of paid leave options in the United States means that the transition to parenthood fuels gendered parenting stereotypes and often exacerbates gender inequality. But it doesn't have to be this way. All parents in the US need access to paid parental leave, and fathers in particular need to be encouraged and incentivized to use paid leave. Gender inequality exists in part because men are expected to prioritize work and women are expected to prioritize family. So simply offering universal paid parental leave may potentially exacerbate gender inequality if only mothers take advantage of leave opportunities and fathers instead continue to prioritize work. However, if fathers had access to paid leave opportunities and took advantage of them, they would have time to better understand domestic needs, learn how to be engaged parents, and gain confidence in performing these tasks, all of which may promote greater gender equality in domestic labor. Moreover, if it was widely expected that both parents would take time off work when a child was born, then perceptions of mothers as less committed to work may dissipate, and we may start to see greater gender equality in paid labor as well. Indeed, some countries reserve periods of paid leave specifically for fathers to encourage greater sharing of paid leave and enable fathers to have that dedicated time at home. Now, time at home for the birth of a child is critical. Babies require a lot of care. Remember, my son demanded care from the second he was born. And parents need to adjust to new routines and develop new patterns of parenting and co-parenting. My research suggests that when American fathers take paternity leave, families benefit. In the United States, fathers who take longer leaves are more likely to engage in behaviors like reading to their children, feeding them, playing with them, and putting them to bed throughout the first few years of their child's life. By taking leave, fathers demonstrate a commitment to carrying their fair share of the domestic load, reducing burdens on mothers, and helping to contribute to greater relationship quality. Mothers report greater relationship satisfaction and co-parenting support in the years following a child's birth when fathers take longer paternity leave. We even find that parents are 25% less likely to end their relationship in the years following a child's birth when fathers take longer paternity leave compared to when fathers do not take leave. The benefits of paternity leave even extend to father-child relationships. Among 9-year-old children in the United States, those whose fathers took at least 2 weeks of paternity leave report feeling closer to their fathers, that their fathers are more involved in their lives, and that they can communicate better with their fathers compared to children whose fathers did not take leave. What all of this research suggests is that paternity leave can strengthen fathers' ties to their family and increase their involvement at home, which ultimately is beneficial for children, mothers, and fathers themselves. Increasing fathers' domestic involvement may not only promote greater gender equality in domestic labor, but also greater gender equality in paid labor, as the burdens of parenting would no longer fall solely onto mothers. Now, I want to be clear that paid paternity leave is not the sole solution to gender inequality, nor is it the sole solution to strengthening families in the United States. But it is one important piece of the puzzle. Now, in many ways, paid parental leave as a policy seems like a no-brainer. There are numerous clear benefits and relatively few downsides. The vast majority of Americans on both sides of the political aisle support paid leave. Now, there are disagreements about what a paid leave policy should look like and how it should be funded, but most other countries and a number of US states have figured this out. I believe that the US can join the rest of the world in offering paid parental leave, and this has really become my career passion, researching and advocating for paid leave in the United States and working to change cultural stereotypes such that we start to view fathers as competent caregivers as well. Now, without widespread access to paid leave in the United States, families have to make difficult decisions. Fathers often get left out, and the burdens of parenting fall primarily onto mothers. One father that I interviewed experienced these challenges firsthand. Adam's son was born with brachial plexus syndrome, a nerve condition that required his son to be airlifted to a children's hospital 4 days after birth and undergo numerous surgeries. Adam was an assistant manager at a hotel at the time and had no access to paid paternity leave. Instead, he had arranged to take a week off work when his son was born, but the hotel owners required him to return to work earlier than planned because they needed him to manage the hotel. While his son was in the hospital over an hour away from where he lived, Adam had to work 16 hours a day every single day. And given financial limitations, he had no choice. But what this meant is that he was unable to play an active role in the care of his son, and the burdens of parenting during this stressful period of time while his son was in the hospital fell solely onto the mother. And it was clear that this bothered him. And when I spoke with Adam, he made it very clear he wished he could have taken a more extensive paternity leave to be able to be more involved and be a more fully engaged dad. Now, I can sympathize with Adam's experiences. When my daughter was born, full term, she couldn't breathe on her own. She spent the first week of her life in critical care, with treatments being unable to stabilize her. She was eventually transferred to a children's hospital and was dubbed the sickest newborn in the state of Indiana. Now, in contrast to Adam, my daughter was born at the end of the semester, which meant that my teaching obligations had ended for the academic year. The flexibility of academia meant that I could focus solely on her without having to also worry about work. My wife and I essentially lived at the hospital for a month, taking an active role in her care, asking questions, and being involved in decisions about the best treatment plans. In the end, the amazing staff at that hospital saved my daughter's life, but the experience admittedly took a tremendous toll on us. I can't even imagine the stress and pressure my wife would have experienced if she would have had to navigate that process alone. I also don't know what would have happened had we not been there to advocate for our daughter. Yet, this is the sad reality for many families in the United States, such as Adam's. We were lucky, but we shouldn't have been. Everyone should have the opportunity to be there for their children at critical care times without fears of economic or workplace repercussions. We need to normalize men's caregiving and provide them with structural opportunities to be more fully engaged at home. Implementing paid parental leave in the United States and supporting fathers in taking leave would help to change gendered expectations of caregiving both at work and at home, promote greater gender equality, and importantly, improve family well-being. Thank you.